Good evening, my friends. The kettle's whispering again, and the night feels kind. Tell me, where are you listening from tonight? Somewhere quiet, I hope. Because peace can be such a fragile thing, can't it? One moment, a cup of tea, and calm. The next, a sound you can't explain. A face you didn't expect. And in this little village, even comfort hides its secrets. So settle in, pour your tea, and listen closely. If you love these quiet mysteries, tap like it helps our tea room grow. Now, shall we begin? Morning came softly. Mist still clung to the hedges. Berwick House looked calm, too calm. Agnes, the housekeeper, stepped into the garden. Her shoes brushed against damp gravel. She paused. The gate was open. It never was. She frowned, looking toward the roses. Something about the air felt wrong. A tool lay near the path. The gardener's spade, left in the soil, half buried. She glanced toward the shed. Door ajar, empty. No sound of movement. No humming. Edgar always hummed while he worked. She called his name once. Then again. Only the crows answered. Inside, Mrs. Holloway poured her morning tea. A letter lay beside her cup. Unmarked. No seal. Just her name in shaky handwriting. She hesitated before opening it. Her fingers trembled slightly. The words were simple. Look beneath the rose bush. Her breath caught. The room felt colder. She read it twice, then 3 times. No signature, no hint of who sent it. Moments later, Agnes entered, pale and uneasy. Madam, Edgar's missing. Mrs. Holloway looked up, startled. Missing? Agnes nodded. The gate's open. His tools are scattered. He's nowhere in the garden. Mrs. Holloway's teacup rattled as she set it down. She handed Agnes the letter. Read this. Agnes scanned the paper, eyes widening. Who would send such a thing? Neither spoke for a long moment. The clock ticked. The fire crackled. The quiet turned. Heavy. Mrs. Holloway rose from her chair. Her steps were slow but firm. Fetch my coat, she said. We're going outside. The garden waited in silence. Birds had stopped singing. Even the air felt cautious. Mrs. Holloway's eyes fell on the roses. They looked different, tangled, uneven. The center bush had been disturbed. She stepped closer. The soil beneath it was darker, fresh, recently turned. Agnes hesitated behind her. Shall I call the constable? Mrs. Holloway shook her head. No, not yet. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook. She knelt down, touched the soil. Cold, damp, soft. She pressed her palm against it, then pulled back. There was something hard beneath, something buried. She looked toward the gate, then back to the bush. The letter's words echoed in her mind. Look beneath the rose bush. Agnes swallowed. Madam, what do you think is under there? Mrs. Holloway didn't answer. Her eyes stayed fixed on the ground. Her voice, when it came, was quiet. Whatever it is, someone wanted me to find it. And the silence that followed didn't feel like silence anymore. It felt like warning. The car slowed before the gate. A small figure stood waiting. Grey hat, neat coat, gloved hands folded. Miss Jane Marple stepped down carefully. Her eyes moved across the garden. So much silence for such a busy house. Agnes came forward quickly. Miss Marple, thank you for coming. Marple smiled gently. It sounded important, my dear. Mrs. Holloway waited in the doorway, pale face, tight fingers on her shawl. The letter still on the table beside her. Miss Marple, she said, voice trembling. I don't know what to make of it. The gardener, he's gone. And this? She handed over the folded paper. Marple's gloved fingers smoothed it flat. Her eyes lingered on the uneven script. Then she looked up. Who found this? I did, Mrs. Holloway replied softly. This morning, with the post. But it isn't postmarked. Marple nodded. Her gaze shifted to the window. Roses outside, disturbed soil still dark. She said nothing for a moment. Tell me, she murmured, did anyone else know of this letter before now? Mrs. Holloway shook her head quickly. No one. Only Agnes once I read it. Marple turned to the housekeeper. Where was the gardener's last task yesterday? Agnes hesitated. By the east hedge, near the rose walk. Did anyone see him after that? No, miss. Not after dusk. Marple's brow furrowed slightly. Curious, she said quietly. Her tone carried no judgment, only thought. She set the letter down carefully. Her eyes drifted again to the garden. Something caught her attention, a shape near the hedge. Small, metallic, glinting faintly in the soil. Without a word, she walked outside. Her steps were unhurried, precise. Mrs. Holloway followed, wringing her hands. The air smelled faintly of rain. A crow called from somewhere unseen. Marple crouched near the rose bed. The soil was soft, freshly turned. Her hand brushed aside a clump of dirt. A fragment of cloth peeked through. Old, torn, faded blue. She looked up. This wasn't the gardener's doing. Mrs. Holloway blinked. How can you tell? Marple's gaze remained steady. Because he was tidy. This, she gestured lightly, was hurried. Agnes leaned closer. You mean someone else dug here? Possibly, Marple said. Or wanted it to appear so. The older woman straightened slowly, eyes scanning the ground. Then her gaze moved toward the open gate. The latch, she murmured. It hung crookedly, the wood splintered at one edge. Marple stepped closer, fingers brushing the crack. Interesting, she whispered. Not broken outward, but inward. She paused, then turned toward Mrs. Holloway. Someone entered last night. Not left. The widow's face, drained of color. Entered, but who would? Marple cut in gently. That, my dear, is what we shall find out. The wind stirred the hedge, a faint rustle. Like movement that didn't belong to the morning. Marple's eyes drifted toward the shed, its door slightly ajar. The handle moved just a little. Agnes gasped, taking a step back. Do you see that? Marple's voice was calm. Yes, but don't be alarmed. She moved toward the shed, careful, deliberate. Inside, tools hung in neat order, all except one, a missing spade. Marple turned back to them. Order tells a story, she said softly. When something neat becomes untidy, it's never by accident. She looked once more toward the disturbed soil, then at the torn cloth in her gloved hand, and for a brief moment her eyes narrowed ever so slightly. She had seen something no one else had, something small, silent, and telling. Mrs. Holloway, she said at last, voice calm but certain. I believe your gardener didn't vanish at all. The air went still. Mrs. Holloway's lips parted, but no sound came. Marple turned toward the roses again. The question, she added quietly, is whether he left, or was left behind. Marple stood near the rose bed. Her gloved hand brushed the soil again. The torn cloth had caught something else. Metal, cold against her fingers. She lifted it carefully. A small silver key, old, worn smooth with years, the kind made for private locks. Mrs. Holloway leaned closer. Good heavens. That wasn't Edgar's, was it? Marple didn't answer right away. Her eyes traced the engraving along the edge. Tiny initials. J.H. Agnes frowned. James Holloway, your late husband? Mrs. Holloway blinked, startled. I suppose it could be. I haven't seen it in years. Marple's gaze lingered on her face. No accusation, only quiet thought. Was there anything it might open? She asked. Mrs. Holloway hesitated. A desk, perhaps, or his old chest upstairs. She looked toward the house, uneasy. I locked that room long ago. The key gleamed faintly in the morning light. Marple turned it once in her hand. It was buried, she said softly. Keys usually aren't, unless someone wanted it hidden. Agnes shifted her weight. But who'd hide a key in the garden? Marple looked down again at the disturbed earth. Someone who thought it safer here than inside. The widow's face tightened. My husband's chest was never opened after he died. Her voice quivered. Not once. I had no reason to. Marple nodded. And the gardener, he worked near this spot often? Every morning, Agnes said. Always careful. Always quiet. Marple's tone was calm. Then either he found this key, or he buried it. The words hung there, heavy, measured. Mrs. Holloway drew a sharp breath. You think Edgar discovered something of my husband's? Perhaps, Marple replied. Or someone else did, before him. She slipped the key into a handkerchief. Then she looked toward the window. Inside the house, the clock chimed once. A single, hollow note through still air. Mrs. Holloway, she said, may I see that room? The widow hesitated, then nodded slowly. Yes, but it's been sealed for years. As they turned to go, Agnes bent near the soil. Her hand brushed something else, another fragment of cloth. This one, darker, fresher. She froze. Miss Marple, this wasn't here yesterday. Marple glanced back. Her eyes narrowed slightly. The tone in her voice dropped low. No, and that changes things. Agnes looked confused. How? Marple straightened. The small silver key rested in her palm again. She closed her hand around it gently. Because, she said quietly, it's not what it seems. The staircase creaked under their steps. Dust floated in the still air. Mrs. Holloway led the way, slow and uneasy. It's this room, she whispered. At the end of the corridor. Her hand shook slightly on the railing. Marple followed without a word. Her eyes moved along the hallway. Old portraits watched silently from the walls. The final door stood apart. Dark oak, heavy brass handle, faintly tarnished. A small lock gleamed beneath the knob. Mrs. Holloway stopped. She touched the key in Marple's hand. It used to fit here, she murmured. Marple examined the key, then the lock. The metal was scratched around the edge. Not new scratches, old ones. As if the door had been tested often. She turned the key slowly. A soft click echoed down the hall. Then a second, duller sound, something shifting behind the door. The hinges groaned as it opened. Air rushed out, dry and stale. Agnes shivered behind them. It smells like it hasn't moved in years. Marple stepped inside first. The room was narrow, lined with shelves. Dust coated everything, except one spot on the desk clean. She brushed her glove over the surface. No dust, she said quietly. Someone's been here recently. Mrs. Holloway frowned. That's impossible. No one comes up here. Marple pointed toward the floor. Footprints. Faint, overlapping, half faded by time. One smaller, one larger, one set leaving, one entering. Do you recognize these shoes? Marple asked. Mrs. Holloway shook her head quickly. Not mine, and not Agnes's either. Marple moved to the desk drawer. Locked. She tugged once, twice. The wood resisted, then gave way with a dull snap. Inside lay papers, folded and brittle. Old ledgers, receipts, and a smaller envelope marked only with initials. J.H. Marple held it up to the light. The seal was broken long ago, empty. She turned it over in her hand. Someone removed what was here, she said. Mrs. Holloway's voice was barely a whisper. Do you think it was Edgar? Marple didn't answer. Her gaze shifted to the far corner. A small box sat there, open, empty, its lining torn. Agnes moved closer. It looks like something was pried out. Marple nodded. Her voice stayed calm, almost soft. Yes, and not long ago. She looked once more at the door. Her hand brushed the wood near the lock. A thin scratch curved beneath the keyhole. Her eyes narrowed. Her tone dropped. It's been opened before. The servants gathered in the kitchen. 3 faces, uneasy, waiting for questions. Marple stood by the hearth, hands folded neatly. Let's begin simply, she said. When did any of you last see Edgar? Lily, the maid, spoke first. Yesterday afternoon, ma'am, near the rose walk. Her eyes darted toward the door. He was trimming, I think. Said he'd finish before supper. Marple nodded once. Did he seem troubled? Lily hesitated. No, ma'am, only quiet. He was always quiet. Agnes shifted beside her. He came in for his wages after that, she said. Didn't say much. Left before dark. Marple's tone stayed light. And you, Thomas? The young footman cleared his throat. I saw him near the tool shed. He was carrying something looked like a parcel. Marple looked up slowly. A parcel? Yes, miss. Wrapped in brown paper. Small, about this big. He gestured with his hands. Mrs.? Holloway frowned. Edgar never carried parcels home. Thomas shrugged, nervous. Could have been his lunch things. Marple turned back to Lily. Did you see him leave the grounds? Lily shook her head. No, miss. But I heard the gate. Just once. Which gate? The one by the east hedge. Agnes frowned. That gate's stiff. Takes 2 hands to move it. Lily looked down quickly. Well, maybe it wasn't him then. Marple watched their faces. Tiny cracks forming in small details. She smiled faintly. You all heard something different, yet at the same time. Thomas swallowed. It was getting dark, miss. Hard to be sure. Marple stepped toward the table. Her hand brushed a folded cloth. You keep the gardener's tools here? Yes, miss, Agnes said. All accounted for except one spade. Marple nodded. The one missing is the same used for roses? Agnes hesitated. Yes, that one. Silence followed, only the slow ticking of the wall clock. Marple's eyes lingered on each of them. Tell me, she said softly, did anyone notice if Edgar was carrying that spade when he left? Lily's lips parted, then closed. Thomas looked at the floor. Agnes clasped her hands tighter. No one saw him leave, miss. Not truly. Marple tilted her head slightly. Then how did the gate open? No one answered. The air seemed heavier. Mrs. Holloway spoke at last. Someone must have gone out after him. Marple's gaze flicked toward her. Or before, she said quietly. Thomas shifted uneasily. I didn't mean to cause trouble, miss. Only, well, there was something else. Marple looked at him. Go on. He lowered his voice. I went to lock the shed after supper. The door was already closed. But the latch, it was damp, like someone had just touched it. Lily gasped. You didn't tell us that. Thomas looked defensive. I thought it was nothing. Marple's expression remained calm. Her voice was even, deliberate. 3 people. 3 memories. None matching. She stepped back toward the hall. Her shoes clicked softly against the tiles. Truth, she murmured, isn't in what they say. Her eyes turned toward the garden window. It's in what they don't. Outside, the gate stood open again, and that made no sense at all. Marple waited until the afternoon light softened. The house had grown quieter, but not calm. Truth hides best in silence. She asked them back, one by one. No scolding, no threat, just questions that lingered. Lily came first, her hands twisted in her apron. You said you heard the gate last night, Marple began. Yes, miss. Once. Was it before or after the supper bell? Lily blinked. After, I think. Marple's brow lifted slightly. You think, or you know? Lily hesitated. Her lips parted, but no words came. It matters, Marple said softly, because the bell rang at 7, and Edgar's boots were still by the door. Lily's eyes flicked upward in surprise. How do you know that? Because I saw them. Marple's tone stayed calm, which means he never left after all. Lily's breathing quickened. I didn't lie, miss. I only didn't want to worry Mrs. Holloway. About what? The maid's gaze dropped. She's been on edge since that chest upstairs went missing its key. Marple said nothing for a moment. Then quietly, Who told you about the key? Lily froze. Agnes had entered behind her, tray in hand. Her expression changed quickly. Too quickly. I did, Agnes said, placing the tray down. Staff gossip travels fast. No harm meant. Marple turned toward her. No harm, perhaps, but strange timing. Agnes met her look steadily, but her jaw tightened. You've served Mrs. Holloway a long time? 20 years. Then you'd know her husband's study was locked until today. Agnes hesitated, then nodded. Yes, miss. None of us go near it. Marple's voice lowered. Yet the floor was swept. Recently. Agnes stiffened. I dust that hallway once a week, but not the room. No, miss. Thomas entered at that moment, wiping his hands. Sorry, miss. You called for me? Marple turned to him slowly. You said yesterday Edgar carried a parcel. Small, wrapped in paper. He nodded. That's right. And what did he do with it? Thomas frowned. He took it toward the shed. Agnes's head snapped toward him. That's not true. He went to the gate. Thomas looked confused. You told me yourself he took the parcel out. The room fell silent. Marple folded her hands neatly. Her tone was quiet, deliberate. So, one says gate, one says shed, and one says nothing at all. Lily's eyes welled slightly. You think we're hiding something? Marple's expression softened. I think you're afraid of something. The wind brushed against the kitchen window. The sound made them all glance that way. A faint squeak from the latch. Marple followed their eyes, calm but sharp. Fear leaves prints too, she said softly. And all of yours lead the same way. Thomas swallowed. Agnes looked away. Lily whispered under her breath. No one meant for it to happen. Marple's gaze settled on her. For what to happen, my dear? Lily said nothing, but the tremor in her hands said enough. Marple glanced between them, then toward the garden. Her voice dropped to a near whisper. They all know something. The rain stopped before dusk. Clouds thinned, leaving the garden damp and pale. Marple stepped outside with purpose. She carried a small lantern. Its light touched the rose beds faintly. Every shadow told a story. Agnes followed reluctantly. I still don't see what you expect to find. Marple didn't answer. Her eyes traced the ground near the east hedge. The soil here, she murmured, was turned twice. Agnes frowned. Twice? Yes, once with care, once in haste. She knelt, brushing the surface with her gloved fingers. The texture shifted halfway down, soft at first, then suddenly firm. Something hard resisted her touch. She dug gently with a trowel. A dull thud met metal. Agnes leaned closer, eyes wide. What is that? Marple didn't reply yet. She cleared the soil away piece by piece. A small tin box emerged, old and rusted, its hinges crusted with age but intact. She lifted it slowly, steady hands. Not Edgar's, she said quietly. This was here long before him. Agnes glanced toward the house. Before him? But how? Marple cut her off gently. Do you recall when Mrs. Holloway's husband died? 15 years ago, miss. Marple nodded. She brushed mud from the lid. 2 letters faintly carved. J.H. Agnes gasped. That's his mark. Yes, Marple said softly. And that means this wasn't the gardener's secret at all. She pried the lid open with care. Inside, a few folded pages. The ink had bled, but words remained. Marple held the first page under the lantern. A date stood out, April 17th, 1915. Beside it, a line. It must stay hidden until I can tell her myself. Agnes crossed herself quietly. What does it mean? Marple's eyes moved down the page. The handwriting trembled near the bottom. A name. For Clara, if the truth ever comes. Agnes whispered. Clara Holloway. Marple nodded once. The wife. The same woman who found the letter today. A drop of rain hit the paper. Marple shielded it with her hand. The second page was shorter, torn halfway through, but one phrase stood clear. He'll never let me leave the house. Agnes shivered. That sounds like... Yes, Marple said quietly, like a warning from the past. She folded the papers carefully, slipped them into her pocket. Edgar found this, she added. That's why he disappeared. Agnes looked toward the window, pale and frightened. Do you think he read it? I think someone feared he did. Marple rose, brushing dirt from her gloves. Her eyes moved across the house front. Dark windows, closed curtains, stillness. She spoke almost to herself. Whatever this note meant, it began here. Not in the garden. The lantern flickered. The house seemed to watch in silence. And Marple, still staring upward, said softly, "It points to the house itself." The constable arrived before nightfall, boots on wet gravel, notebook ready, eyes alert. Mrs. Holloway met him by the porch. Her relief looked practiced, almost rehearsed. "I'm glad you've come," she said quickly. "The gardener's gone, and Miss Marple found proof." Marple stood a little apart. She didn't interrupt. The constable adjusted his hat. "What sort of proof, ma'am?" Mrs. Holloway held out the tin box. "Buried in my garden, with my husband's mark." Her tone wavered between fear and pride. "As far as I see, it's theft." He examined the rusted lid. "Who knew this was here?" "Only Edgar," she answered. "Who else could have hidden it?" Agnes spoke from behind them. "Maybe he meant no harm. Maybe he planned to return it." Mrs. Holloway turned sharply. "Return it? He disappeared with secrets." The constable nodded slowly. "Still, we'll need to look for him. Likely took what was inside." He scribbled a note. "Miss Marple, you agree?" Marple's eyes stayed on the key in her hand. "The conclusion fits," she said softly, "but I don't yet know if it's right." He smiled politely. "Simple theft gone wrong, most likely. He found valuables, took them, fled." Mrs. Holloway exhaled almost in relief. "Yes, that must be it." Agnes looked uneasy. "Then why was the door upstairs unlocked?" Mrs. Holloway stiffened. "He forced it, no doubt." Marple's voice was calm. "Perhaps. But why return the key?" No one answered. The question hung like a thread between them. The constable closed his notebook. "We'll search the grounds again tomorrow, but I'd say this gardener of yours will turn up elsewhere soon enough." Marple's gaze lingered on his face. "Elsewhere?" He nodded. "If he's guilty, he won't stay near the scene." She gave a small polite smile. "Yes, if he's guilty." Mrs. Holloway drew her shawl tighter. "I just want it over. I can't have police in and out forever." The constable tipped his hat. "Understood, ma'am. I'll take the box for record." Marple's hand stopped him gently. "I'd prefer to keep it safe here for now." He frowned but didn't argue. "As you wish, miss." When he left, silence filled the hall again. Mrs. Holloway exhaled deeply. "At least it's settled," she said. "Poor Edgar. Foolish man." Marple turned to her. "Foolish, perhaps, but thieves usually hide what they steal, not where it can be found." Agnes looked at her sharply. "You mean someone planted it?" Marple didn't reply. Her gaze shifted toward the staircase. The faintest smile touched her lips. "Perhaps," she said quietly, "but it's all too tidy, isn't it?" Mrs. Holloway frowned. "Tidy?" Marple looked back toward the rose garden, lantern light flickering on the damp glass. "Yes," she murmured, "much too clean to be true." The wind picked up near dusk. Leaves moved against the windows. The house made quiet sounds, uneasy ones. Marple sat in the small study. The tin box lay open before her, only 2 pages inside now. She frowned. "I counted 3 yesterday," she murmured. Agnes looked startled. "There were only 2, miss." Marple's gaze lifted slowly. "I never miscount." Her tone stayed calm, but her mind sharpened. Someone had touched the box. She turned to Mrs. Holloway. "Did anyone enter this room after I left?" The widow shook her head too quickly. "No one. I keep it locked." Marple rose, walked toward the shelf. Her gloved hand brushed the dust. 3 faint circles marked missing items. Books removed. Recently. "May I ask," she said quietly, "who keeps the second key to this room?" "Mrs." Holloway's lips tightened. "There isn't one." Marple looked back at her. "Then someone made one." Agnes stepped forward, anxious. "Miss Marple, you can't mean the constable? He was here this morning." Marple didn't answer. Her fingers rested on the box again. She turned it over. The underside had new scratches. Fine, fresh, metallic. Something pried it open recently. She looked at Mrs. Holloway again. "When your husband was alive, who handled his papers?" Agnes did mostly, she said. Why? Marple's voice softened. Because these pages weren't sealed for 15 years. Someone read them last week. Mrs. Holloway blinked fast. That's absurd. Marple tilted her head slightly. Then explain why the ink smudges are still wet in places. The widow turned pale. Her hands trembled. I don't know how. Marple stepped closer. The gardener may have found the box, yes, but someone else knew it existed before he did. Someone who wanted its discovery to mean something else. Agnes gasped. You mean he was blamed? Marple nodded. Conveniently blamed. She picked up the silver key again. It caught the light too bright for something buried long. She rubbed it gently with her thumb. No rust, no earth marks. It was planted later. Mrs. Holloway sank into the chair. Her voice cracked. Who would do that? Marple's answer was quiet, steady. Someone who wanted the past to stay buried, but needed a scapegoat. The house seemed to breathe in silence. Every creak sounded louder than before. Agnes spoke barely above a whisper. Miss Marple, who could it be? Marple turned her gaze toward the doorway. The faint shadow of movement flickered there, someone listening. She smiled faintly, but not kindly. Whoever they are, she said softly. Someone's framing someone. Morning light crept through the curtains. The air felt thinner, cautious. Marple stood by the window, deep in thought. The missing page still bothered her. Someone had taken it for a reason. Secrets never vanish. They shift hands. She turned toward the old desk. Drawers lined neatly, but one sat crooked. She opened it slowly. Inside lay a thin ledger. Leather cover, dusty corners, no title, no initials. She flipped through the pages. Old payments, household notes, staff wages. Then the handwriting changed. Sharper. Male. James Holloway. Agnes entered quietly. You're up early, miss. Marple nodded absently. Sometimes truth doesn't sleep long. She pointed at a date. April. 1915. The same as the letter. Agnes leaned closer. What's written there? Marple read aloud. Wages adjusted. One gardener dismissed. Name. C. Denning. She paused. Does that name mean anything to you? Agnes frowned. No, miss. Never heard it. Marple tapped the line gently. Then perhaps you should have. She turned another page. The same name appeared again, but this time not under wages, under settlements. Mrs. Holloway entered just then. Her tone was forced calm. I wish you wouldn't dig into his affairs, Miss Marple. Marple smiled faintly. Digging is rather necessary given the gardener's absence. Mrs. Holloway said nothing. Marple continued reading. The entries stopped suddenly in June. Then a single note in different ink. Debt cleared by transfer. No name, no sum. She looked up. Who handled your husband's accounts after he passed? Mrs. Holloway hesitated. My brother-in-law, Robert Denning. Agnes gasped softly. Denning? You said the gardener's name. Yes, Marple said. C. Denning. Likely Charles. Possibly Robert's father. Mrs. Holloway turned pale. Impossible. They barely knew each other. Marple's tone was calm, logical. Then why do they share both ledger and soil? She walked toward the portrait above the fireplace. A man in uniform stared down. His frame was newer than the others. Marple touched the frame's corner. Fresh dust missing where it had been moved. She tilted it slightly. Behind it, a folded envelope. She opened it slowly. Inside, a photograph. James Holloway standing with another man. The same sharp jaw. The same eyes. Agnes whispered, Is that? Marple nodded. Yes. Robert Denning. Your husband's business partner. Mrs. Holloway pressed a hand to her chest. He told me they quarreled. Over money. Not just money, Marple said softly. Over silence. The kind that pays well. She set the photo down carefully. The gardener wasn't their first secret, just the first one to dig in the wrong place. The clock struck 8, a hollow echo through the hall. Marple turned toward them both. Her voice, almost gentle, carried weight. This family's soil holds more than roses. She glanced back at the ledger once more, and under her breath, she added, "This isn't their first crime." The afternoon passed in uneasy quiet. Rain had returned light, steady, persistent. Marple sat near the parlor fire, knitting untouched. Her thoughts replayed the ledger, the letters, the photo. Pieces clicked, but not cleanly. Something was still out of line. Mrs. Holloway entered, pale and restless. "You found so much, Miss Marple, yet nothing explains Edgar." Marple looked up, calm and sharp. "Perhaps it does. We've only missed what's in plain sight." Agnes appeared in the doorway, hesitant. "Tea, miss?" Marple nodded gently. "Yes, please. 3 cups. Mrs." Holloway forced a small smile. "You still believe he's alive, don't you?" Marple's tone was even. "I believe he was never meant to be found." The widow froze. Her hand tightened on the teacup handle. It slipped slightly, then steadied. Marple's eyes followed the movement. "You're left-handed, Mrs. Holloway?" "No, right-handed." "Why?" Marple smiled faintly. "Then why stir tea with your left hand?" The cup stopped mid-air. Agnes glanced up in confusion. Marple continued quietly. "Because the burn on your wrist makes it painful." The widow flinched. "How did you?" Marple pointed gently toward the faint red mark. "From a kettle, perhaps? Or a lantern? The night Edgar vanished?" Agnes gasped. "Madam, you were in the garden?" "Mrs." Holloway shook her head quickly. "No, I wasn't. You're mistaken." Marple stood slowly. "Then you'll forgive my curiosity." She moved to the mantelpiece. The silver keys still lay there, polished now. "Strange, isn't it?" she said softly. "How something buried for years can shine like this overnight." She turned the key between her fingers, almost as if someone cleaned it. Mrs. Holloway's lips parted, no words came. Agnes whispered. She cleaned it herself. The silence thickened. Only the rain filled the gaps. Marple's voice remained gentle. "Your husband and Mr. Denning hid something, didn't they? And when Edgar found it, he tried to speak." The widow trembled. Tears formed, unfallen. "He shouldn't have dug there," she whispered. "He wasn't supposed to." Marple nodded slowly. "So, you stopped him." The woman's breath hitched, sharp. "I didn't mean he startled me there, was shouting." Agnes stepped back, horrified. "Madam, no." Mrs. Holloway sank into the chair, shaking. "I only wanted to stop the lies returning." Marple placed the key down quietly. "Yet the past doesn't stay buried. It only waits for new hands." The widow covered her face, weeping softly. Marple turned toward Agnes. "Send for the constable. But not for murder." "Not yet." Agnes hesitated. "Not murder?" Marple looked back toward the window. Outside, the rose bed glistened in the rain. Her tone lowered, cold, precise. "He didn't vanish, Agnes," she said quietly. "He was erased." The constable returned after dark, lantern in hand, coat still wet. He found Marple waiting in the drawing room. Mrs. Holloway sat across from her, pale, silent, wrists trembling in her lap. Agnes hovered near the doorway, frightened to breathe. Marple's voice broke the stillness first. "I think we should speak plainly now." The constable nodded. "Best do, ma'am." Marple leaned forward slightly. "Mrs. Holloway, I'd like you to tell us again the night Edgar disappeared, from the beginning." The widow swallowed. "I was in my room. I heard nothing." Her tone sounded rehearsed, too careful. Marple's eyes didn't leave her face. Not even the gate. Agnes heard it from her quarters. The woman hesitated. "It must have been the wind." Marple tilted her head. "Yet the latch was broken inward. Not by wind. Not by chance." The constable scribbled quietly. The widow's breath quickened. "I told you I wasn't outside." Her fingers twisted the edge of her sleeve. A nervous twitch, small but telling. Marple watched it. "You burned your wrist that night. You were holding a lantern, but not for gardening, I think." The constable looked up sharply. Marple continued, calm as ever. "You went to the rose bed. You saw Edgar digging. He found the box. You tried to stop him. The widow's eyes glistened. Her lips trembled. That isn't true. Marple's tone softened slightly. Then why clean the key? Why polish away the soil? The woman's breath hitched. I only didn't want people talking. Marple nodded slowly. Yes, but you see, secrets invite talk far louder than truth. The constable stepped forward. Mrs. Holloway, did you strike him? She looked up suddenly, shocked. No, never. He stumbled. Marple's gaze sharpened. Stumbled where? Her silence was enough. The older woman closed her eyes. Her voice cracked like breaking glass. He tripped near the spade. I tried to pull him up. He hit his head. I didn't mean... Agnes gasped quietly. The constable froze mid-step. Marple's voice lowered again. And then... Mrs. Holloway's reply came slowly, each word fragile. I panicked. The soil was loose. I thought if I covered it, maybe no one would know. Marple exhaled, steady. No one ever truly buries guilt, Mrs. Holloway. It finds air. The widow's tears fell freely now. I wasn't cruel, she whispered. I just couldn't face another scandal. Not after my husband. Marple rose quietly. Her face unreadable, her tone firm but kind. Fear writes faster than reason, but fear never finishes the story. She looked at the constable. Take her statement. Treat her gently. Then she turned back once more. The widow met her eyes through tears. You believe me, don't you? Marple's answer came in a whisper, calm, merciful but heavy. You didn't mean to kill him, did you? The confession hung in the air. No one moved. The fire cracked once, then went still. Mrs. Holloway sat trembling, eyes hollow. The constable lowered his notebook slowly. Agnes stood near the door, pale and shaking. Marple broke the silence first. Where did it happen? She asked softly. The widow's lips quivered. In the garden, near the roses. The constable stepped forward. We'll have to dig, ma'am. Her face twisted with dread. No, please don't make me watch. Marple's tone stayed calm. You've watched it in your mind for days. Mrs. Holloway's breath caught. Tears welled again, quick and uneven. The constable turned to leave. I'll get the men. Marple raised a hand slightly. Not yet. Let her finish. The widow gripped the arm of her chair. I only wanted to protect what was left of us. My husband. He ruined everything before he died. Her voice broke. I thought I could hide the rest. Marple stood beside her quietly. What was in the missing page? Mrs. Holloway looked away. A confession. My husband's. He forged Denning's signature. Sold part of the estate. Edgar found the ledger and the letter. The constable scribbled fast. Marple nodded slowly. Then, Edgar knew too much. The widow shook her head. I begged him not to speak. He wouldn't listen. Said the truth should rest with the dead. Her voice cracked again. I only wanted to keep peace. Marple folded her hands. Peace built on deceit always falls. The words hit hard. Mrs. Holloway began to sob. Agnes stepped closer. Madam, please. You must let them find him. But before she could answer, a sound echoed from outside. A sharp creak the garden gate. The constable turned quickly. Someone's out there. He moved to the door. Marple followed, calm but watchful. They reached the veranda. Rain pooled in the gravel. A shape moved beyond the hedge. The constable's lantern cut through the dark. A man's coat lay tangled near the path. Old, mud-streaked, familiar. Agnes gasped. That's Edgar's, but Marple's eyes narrowed. Not just his. Something glinted beneath the coat, a ring. She bent, lifted it with her gloved hand. The initials inside read R.D. Robert Denning, she whispered. Agnes stared in disbelief. But he died years ago. Marple's mind moved fast. Nobody was ever found, only the story told. The constable's voice was tense. Then who's been moving about this property now? Marple turned back toward the house. The upstairs curtain shifted slightly. She straightened slowly. Her tone dropped to a murmur. It isn't over yet. Behind them, the widow whispered, broken and afraid. You said he was gone. Marple's gaze stayed on the dark window above, her voice calm, but heavy with warning. It's over, unless we're wrong. The constable hurried inside. Rain dripped from his hat brim. The house was locked, he said. No one outside now. Marple remained near the veranda, her eyes fixed on the upper window. The curtain moved, she murmured. Someone's still here. Mrs. Holloway trembled. There's no one else, only us. Marple turned slightly. Then perhaps you've forgotten someone. Agnes gasped softly. Robert Denning, she whispered. The widow shook her head violently. He died before the war. There was a letter. Marple's tone was calm. Yes, a letter your husband wrote. Not him. The words settled like dust. Even the rain seemed to stop. The constable frowned. You're saying Denning didn't die? Marple nodded slowly. I'm saying someone wanted us to think he did. She walked to the fire, poked the ashes once. Something small gleamed beneath the blackened wood. A cufflink. Gold. Monogrammed R.D. She held it up. This was never meant to burn. Mrs. Holloway's breath hitched. That was my husband's, she stammered. Marple's eyes softened. No, my dear. It was his partner's. The widow's voice cracked. But James told me. He told you what you needed to hear, Marple finished. To hide what really happened. Agnes stepped back, realization dawning. Mr. Denning never left, did he? Marple shook her head. No, he stayed. Buried deep in ledgers, not earth. The constable looked puzzled. In ledgers? Yes, Marple said. James Holloway forged Denning's records, stole his money, and claimed his death. When Edgar uncovered the documents, he discovered more than old soil. Mrs. Holloway covered her face. He said Denning was cruel, dangerous. I believed him. Marple nodded gently. And he buried the truth under roses, under grief, under guilt. Agnes whispered. Then what did Edgar find? Marple turned the cufflink over in her palm. Proof. Proof that Denning's death was a lie, and proof that your mistress's husband murdered him for greed. The constable exhaled slowly. So Edgar tried to expose it. Marple nodded once. Yes, and that's why he vanished. Mrs. Holloway sobbed quietly. My husband's sins are gone with him. Marple's tone cooled. No, Mrs. Holloway. His ghost lives in every page he falsified. The widow looked up, eyes red. Then what was in that box? Marple opened her handbag and drew out the folded paper. Denning's final entry, she said softly. It wasn't a confession. It was a claim. The constable leaned closer. A claim? Marple nodded. An accusation. That James Holloway buried his crimes in numbers, not graves. Rain tapped gently at the glass again. The sound was the only voice left. Marple turned toward the rose garden once more. Her words were soft but sharp. Your gardener didn't uncover a body. He uncovered proof. Mrs. Holloway looked at her helplessly. So, he buried it again? Marple's gaze stayed on the dark window above. Her voice lowered, final, certain. No, she whispered. He buried the wrong thing. Dawn broke quietly over Berwick House. The rain had stopped. Mist clung to the hedges, heavy and still. Marple sat by the window, the ledger, the cufflink, the letter all before her. The constable stood nearby, waiting for her words. Mrs. Holloway remained seated, pale and hollow. Agnes poured tea, hands trembling faintly. No one spoke first. Marple looked at the ledger again. Greed never vanishes, she said softly. It simply learns new disguises. The constable frowned. I still can't see how Denning fits it all. Marple nodded, patient, deliberate. Denning trusted Holloway. They built this house together. But trust, once cracked, splinters everything around it. She tapped the first ledger. Entry. This note, debt cleared by transfer, was Denning's life traded for silence. Your husband forged his death, took his money, and used this estate to wash it clean. Mrs. Holloway pressed a hand to her chest. Tears welled again, slow and steady. He said Denning ruined him, that he stole from us. Marple's voice lowered. He stole peace instead. From you, from him, from Edgar. Agnes whispered. So Edgar found the proof, didn't he? Marple nodded once. Yes. He saw Denning's signature. He realized the truth and meant to tell it. But fear silenced him before anyone else could. The constable scribbled notes, shaking his head. And the body. Marple looked up gently. There was no body, only guilt buried under roses. Silence returned. The clock ticked. A drip of water fell from the eaves outside. Mrs. Holloway stared at her hands. All this time, I thought Edgar betrayed us. Marple's tone softened. He was trying to free you from a lie. Agnes's voice cracked. He died for honesty. Marple looked toward her kindly. No, my dear. He died because others feared it. The constable closed his notebook. So it ends here, then. Marple smiled faintly, but her eyes stayed distant. Endings rarely obey us, constable. They arrive when the silence grows too loud. He nodded slowly, uncertain. Mrs. Holloway wiped her eyes. Will they forgive me? She asked quietly. Marple set down her teacup. Truth forgives no one. It simply waits to be known. Agnes crossed herself, whispering a prayer. Outside, the garden shimmered with dew. The roses bowed under the light, as if listening. Marple rose, straightened her coat, and looked once more toward the window. Her reflection stared back calm, unflinching. She spoke softly, almost to herself. The dead don't speak, but the earth does. Every lie leaves its scent, every secret its seed. The constable turned toward her. So, it's truly over? Marple paused, eyes still on the garden. Her answer came like a whisper, carried by mist. It's over for them, perhaps, she said quietly, then added, colder, slower. But truth doesn't end it. It exposes it. The house had gone still again. No footsteps, no whispers, only the faint ticking of the mantel clock. Miss Marple sat by the window. Her knitting lay folded beside the teapot. Steam rose gently, curling in the morning light. Agnes entered softly, tray in hand. Fresh tea, miss, she said. Her voice carried a tremor the kind grief leaves behind. Marple smiled faintly. Thank you, my dear. The morning feels quieter than usual. Agnes nodded. It feels empty. Marple poured the tea slowly. Each sound soft, deliberate, final. She set a cup near the edge of the table. For Mrs. Holloway, she murmured. Agnes hesitated. She's gone, miss. They took her to town. Marple nodded once. Yes, but habits linger longer than people. They both sat for a moment, neither speaking. Outside, the roses stirred in the breeze. Rainwater still clung to the petals, trembling like unshed tears. Agnes looked toward the garden. I don't think I'll ever look at it the same. Marple's eyes followed her gaze. Nor should you. Truth changes the soil it touches. The kettle whistled softly on the hearth. Agnes refilled the pot, her movements careful. Do you think she meant to kill him? Marple shook her head. No. Intent fades where fear begins. She lifted her cup, hands steady. The gardener sought light. She sought silence. Both paid. Her tone was quiet, neither harsh nor forgiving. Agnes sighed. I can't believe all this happened in one house. Marple gave a small smile. Oh, you'd be surprised what walls remember. A long pause followed. Only the ticking filled the gap. Even the birds outside seemed to wait. Marple reached for her knitting, untangling a loose thread. People hide truth, as they hide sin neatly, with pride. But both unravel when time tugs gently. Agnes folded her hands. What will happen now? Marple looked thoughtful. The constable will write his report. The papers will tell a smaller story, and the roses will bloom again as they always do. She looked into her teacup, its surface trembling slightly. Peace returns slowly, she said softly. Like tea cooling on porcelain. Agnes gave a faint smile. It's strange. The house feels lighter even after everything. Marple nodded. That's what truth does. It removes weight, not sorrow. They sat together in silence. The clock struck 10. A thin beam of sunlight crossed the tablecloth. Marple lifted her cup again, her voice barely above a whisper. The world forgets names, Agnes, but it never forgets lessons. She sipped once, set the cup down gently. The sound was small but complete. Outside, a bird began to sing. Marple looked up, calm eyes steady. "Let it rest now," she said softly. Tea and truth both cooled when left alone. And as the room filled with quiet warmth, the silence at last felt clean. Thank you for joining us tonight, dear friends, in this quiet corner of mysteries and murmured truths. If you've listened this far, you already know, in Street Mary Mead, even roses can whisper secrets. Now tell me which clue gave it away for you first. Was it the polished key, the missing page, or perhaps that quiet lie told over tea? Your thoughts always spark new riddles for the next story, so leave them in the comments below. And if you'd like to help keep our little tea room glowing, tap like, subscribe, or join the membership circle for early mysteries and ad-free nights. Each cup shared here keeps the stories alive, and your support helps the kettle stay warm. Until we meet again under gentler rain and softer lamps, I thank you deeply for listening, thinking, and sipping slow with Miss Marple and me. Now close your eyes, let the truth settle like sugar in tea, and remember peace returns quietly, but never without reason. Until next time, may truth cool slower than tea.